Welcome to the BDO News of March 2022. These are the headlines. We take a look behind the scenes of BDO's Inside Days, or better yet, BDO's Inside Days and Nights. We discuss BDO's ambition with regard to green mobility. And we officially welcome the colleagues from BDO Digital into the family of BDO Advisory. As a young graduate, the world is at your feet. You have talent, ambition, dreams, and an insatiable drive to make it. But how do you know where to put your talents to the best use, or where you really feel at home? During BDO's Inside Days and Nights, graduates can find out for themselves. No endless PowerPoint presentations or a simple tour around the building, but the unique chance to experience what it's really like to work in one of BDO's business practices. Getting a taste of an average working day of an accountant, an auditor, or a tax and legal consultant. Participating in a real meeting with a client and carrying out actual tasks. Let's have a look.
Premièrement, nous avons commencé par une session d'information. On nous a fait une petite revue de l'historique de l'entreprise. Et donc, on a commencé par la session d'information. Ensuite, on a visité un peu le bâtiment par des collègues juniors qui nous ont un peu expliqué leur concept, leur travail, leur métier de tous les jours en tant que consultant.
De Inside Day is eigenlijk supergoed meegevallen. Het is heel leuk om eens echt op de werkvloer te staan met consultants die u heel aandachtig uitleggen wat ze doen in hun projecten en u echt bij de hand nemen om te zien wat een normale werkdag bij BDO hoe dat die er zou uitzien. Het beeld dat ik had van BDO was een beetje toch anders dan de andere Big Four. Ik heb gesproken met collega's van jullie op jobfairs die mij toen zeiden BDO is echt een family. En dat heb ik hier vandaag toch wel kunnen ervaren.
I would definitely recommend BDO to my friends, and I would tell them that they should go for it because they should have a look and discover what are the different fields of BDO and where they're active in.
Ik ga zeker de applicatieprocedure nog eens doornemen en dan ga ik ben zeker wel aan het overwegen om te appliceren.
Finissons d'abord nos études, ensuite on y pensera. Mais voilà, en tout cas, c'est une option que j'envisage bien sûr.
Yes, I would apply for a position at BDO because I think it's a nice company and I really want to work for BDO. So, yeah.
In 2026, the cost of cars running on fossil fuels will no longer be tax deductible. Switching to electric cars, therefore, seems like the only option for companies. Responsible fleet management must be geared towards sustainability, and a green mobility policy is the way to go. Wondering how BDO will tackle this challenge? I'm joined here today by Wim Galbusera, HR Director of BDO, and Yves Helven, who is a mobility consultant. So Yves, I'm guessing you have an electric car at home.
Well, actually, I don't have a car. I decided a number of years ago to let go of my company car and try to figure out for myself whether I could be entirely mobile by using mobility. So what I do today is I use a variety of options, everything that's available to me, and that can go from a short-term rental car, bicycle, public transport, and I try to get wherever I need to go with flexible mobility solutions, and it works.
And you live in Amsterdam, so
and
I guess biking is top of the...
Absolutely, okay. Absolutely. You cannot live in Amsterdam and not have a bike.
So I'm guessing also you're a fan of sustainability?
Absolutely, super high on the agenda, personally in my personal life, but also in my mobility behavior. Personal life, for instance, I'm a big fan of circular economy, so basically don't buy anything if you don't really need it, replace it only when it's no longer usable, and try to hand it over to other people who can still use it. So extend the life cycle of anything that you buy and anything that you do.
Okay, good cause. Wim, how about your sustainability genes?
I'm also trying to be as sustainable as possible, but I'm not as far as Yves is as today. I still have a company car. My intentions are to move to a more CO2 neutral company car, but I'm not there yet. But I have plans.
You have plans. So at BDO, we're in the midst of a large mobility project. Could you elaborate on it? Why now?
Okay. Well, we see that more and more people, colleagues of us, asking for flexibility. And today we are very much focused on a company car. We want to change that, and we want to make it more mobility-wise. So we want to offer smart solutions which are tailored to our colleagues and make it more flexible for them.
Okay.
That's the idea. But of course, we also motivated by the regulations, as you mentioned in the introduction. So that will be a factor as well, of course.
And then you come into play. Who's in the driver's seat of this project?
Well, the way this type of project traditionally works is that you try to integrate all the people that you touch, right? So we have a core team. HR is very much present, finance is present, procurement is present. But then on top of that, we have a team of functional experts. Simply because when you talk about mobility or electric, you need an expert. When you talk about policy, you need a legal advisor and so on. So we have two layers of project within the project team, the core team who works daily on the project, and then the people who support us.
And then stakeholders like, for example, young BDO, because they are very active within BDO?
Exactly. So we're delivering a solution to people, right? We're delivering solutions to the BDO employees, which means that you need to include those people in the design of your solution. And nothing is more important than the 40+% of young people who are represented by Jörg and BDO.
Yeah, in fact, because mobility is really a crossroad of very much everything we see. It's about employee experience, it's about budget, it's about mobility choices you make. So you have to have a multiple team that is working together to make sure that you have a holistic approach towards mobility.
Yeah. To come up with the mobility strategy, could you already tell us something about the strategy for BDO?
Well, first of all, we want to be a social partner as an employer in society. So we are focusing on sustainability and making sure that our CO2 footprint is reduced. We are a big fleet owner, so we have very much impact on that. But at the other hand, as I said, we want to make sure that our employees have flexible solutions that are answering towards their needs. So that's an important one as well, of course.
Yeah. And you are like the outside expert. How ambitious is BDO in the strategy?
Well, we're actually looking at one of the most ambitious projects that we as mobility consultants have ever done. What you would typically see is a company doing a little bit of electrification or a little bit of mobility, but you rarely see the type of transformation that BDO is preparing for, because we're looking at, how are we transforming our petrol and diesel fleet into a fully electric fleet within a reasonable timeline, actually within a pretty ambitious timeline. And on top of that, create flexibility through the mobility options. And on top of that, integrate different policies into one new policy. So we're looking at a pretty big project. And what we're doing here is rather exceptional in the world of fleet transformations.
Okay, so BDO is first in class.
Absolutely.
Best in class. Good to know. Now, the subject of green mobility already focuses on the electric cars. So let's tackle electric cars first. There were some questions. We asked it to the BDO employees as well, and they were very concerned about this topic. First question, of course, is the charging costs. Who will take that on? Is BDO going to do something as to this cost?
It's part of our solution, of course. We are not only looking at electrification of our fleet, but of course, if you have an electrical car, you need to charge it. So it needs to be part of the solution. So that's one thing. Second thing is we are in the midst of our building the solution, so we cannot give 100% definitive answer yet, but at least we are looking at all the different charging possibilities that should exist, meaning charging at home, charging in the office, charging in public, fast chargers, and so on and so forth. So we're looking at a solution that is answering towards all the different needs and different scenarios that are possible.
as for charging at the office, how will we tackle that?
So the way we are approaching the sourcing of the charging infrastructure is to be as comprehensive as possible. So that means we're looking at charging at home, charging on the road, but also charging at the offices. And within that topic of office charging, we're looking at finding a solution both for the owned offices as well as for the rented offices.
Okay. And will everyone be forced to opt for an electric car?
Now, electric vehicles are suitable for most, but are not suitable for everyone. So what we do is we look at a certain type or a profile of the employees. That means people with the opportunity to charge their vehicles overnight, or people who have the opportunity to install a home charger, right? It's a typical EV profile. Now, nonetheless, there's always going to be a number of people, for instance, the younger people living in a city center, in a small apartment without their own parking place. Well, these people will not necessarily be immediately suitable for an electric vehicle, and we will look for sustainable alternatives for these people as well.
Yeah, and hybrid cars, is that an option?
That is definitely an option for these people.
Yeah. And what about the available types of electric cars? What can they choose? Will they be fancy enough?
Well, that will depend on the negotiations we will have with our different brands. But one thing that will be different is that, of course, we will base ourselves not on leasing budget, but on TCO budget, which is the total cost of ownership. And we know that the TCO budget is not the same as a leasing budget. So depending on the negotiations, but also on the availability of certain models, we'll have a new offer in our car lists that will be the new electrical car.
Yeah. Talking about the budget, that's a good segue to the next question, because green mobility is more than just electric cars.
Indeed.
What is the mobility budget?
Okay, well, mobility budget, let me explain briefly because it's quite complex, but in general you have three pillars. First pillar is that you can choose a greener, smaller car within a TCO budget, which is calculated on the total cost. And then that's the first pillar. And then if you have chosen or not chosen a greener car, you can go to the second pillar. And the second pillar is in fact all about different mobility solutions, like rent a bike or something for public transportation and so on and so forth. So that's the second pillar. And then the third pillar is all the rest, which you haven't used in the first two pillars, and that's then a cash amount that you can get at the end of the year.
Okay, so when your budget is not completely used, you can have the cash at the end of the month of the rest of the budget.
Yeah. Indeed, and the big advantage of a mobility budget is, of course, is the first pillar where you choose for a more CO2-friendly car, but that also in the second pillar where you can choose those mobility solutions which are much more physically interesting than if you would buy an electrical bike privately.
Yeah, and talking about mobility solutions, Vigo is often mentioned. Could you elaborate on what is it and how does it come into play?
So like Wim explained, that the entire idea of mobility and the mobility budget is to offer more flexibility at a better tax rate to the employees, right? So that's the core idea. The downside is obviously that you have people who will have different mixes, right? Someone might go for a very small car and use the second pillar up to a certain amount to get more access to public transport and alternative mobility solutions, and then you will have someone else who has completely different interests and will have a different outcome of the usage of their mobility budget. So you have potentially a lot of different profiles within that mobility budget. Now you need to manage that. So basically means that you need to be able to record all the transactions done in the second pillar and the costs that are related to the first pillar in order to make that mobility budget calculation on a monthly basis. Now, this is what Vigo does. Vigo brings all of that together on one platform so that both the employee can still monitor how much money they have left, but at the same time, from an operational point of view, BDO is capable of monitoring that, reporting it into payroll, and making sure that people respect the budgets that they're allocated.
And an important aspect adding to that is employee experience as well. You want to make sure that it is simple as possible, that people can follow up on their budget and make sure that they know exactly every day how much is left in their budget. So that's an important aspect, and which is also in scope of our project, is making sure that we have a good tool that employees can use, but that we, from a HR perspective, can also manage all these different budgets together.
So in the mobility budget, there's only one tool that's going to be used, and it's Vigo, and it's like an app on your mobile phone.
Well, it doesn't say it needs to be Vigo. There are lots of other tools on the market. So that's part of the study we will be doing is, okay, what's the best tool for our solutions?
Okay. So you already mentioned BDO is quite ambitious. Are we also ambitious as to the timing of this project?
We are quite ambitious. In fact, all depends a bit on the renewal of our fleet. So there will be a big renewal next year. So the idea is to be ready by next year so that we are already able to offer greener cars for the new renewal in 2023. From a project point of view, the idea is that we have a good plan, an implementation plan ready by summer that we can then execute for the next coming years. Indeed.
That's ambitious. Yves, do you have any closing remarks or wishes?
It's, you know, as a mobility consultant, it's always nice to work with companies that do the right thing, right? Because like I explained in the beginning, sustainability is much more for me than just a corporate objective. It's also a principle that I adhere to, and working with a company like BDO with these ambitions and this comprehensive way of looking at a transformation model is pretty exceptional. So I support fully the ambitions of BDO. I'm sure we're going to make it.
Yeah, and we're looking forward to the footage of this whole stream of electric cars leaving the parking lot.
Indeed.
Okay, thank you very much, Yves and Wim.
Thank you.
Although BDO Digital has been part of BDO for quite some time, BDO Advisory wanted to take the opportunity to officially welcome them into the BDO Advisory family. A fun program was offered with a creative and sustainable touch, and, of course, there was a party involved. Let's meet the party people.
Today we have the first post-COVID BDO advisory team building, and we're actually building bikes with all the advisory practices. So we wanted to do an interactive team event where the people would be working together, but we also wanted to stress the importance of sustainability, so we're actually building bikes that we can send to Africa.
It's so important to work together, but also to play and to play hard together. So I'm convinced that this brings people closer together, connecting to the colleagues, to the teams again, to BDO, to at the end also provide better services to our clients.
Thank you for watching the BDO News. Looking forward to meet you again next month.